Welcome to the Cricket Matters podcast. I'm your host, Josh Kennedy. With me, as always, is my co-host, James Breese. And our guest today has worked at some of South Africa's most esteemed cricket institutions, from directing Gary Kirsten's Cricket Academy to running his own highly successful cricket academy in Cape Town. A batting performance specialist with 26 years coaching experience. Using his three-step simple batting process, he's helped batsmen at all levels create personalised processes to access their run flow state so they can convert starts into hundreds and eliminate batting form slumps, establishing consistent, repeatable processes for how they think, train and play. It is an absolute pleasure to introduce the batting performance specialist, Gio Colussi. Gio, welcome to the Cricket Matters podcast.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this. It's been in the pipeline for quite some time since James and I first connected, probably last year, or might have even been the year before last. Time is flying.
Yeah. James, you want to give a quick shout out to someone who's helped us put this together?
Absolutely. Huge shout out to Rayan Khan, who literally connected us. So a mutual client, we were working with his fitness. Gio was working with his batting, and he put us in connection but literally just over 12 months ago. And from there, we ended up meeting in South Africa at the over 40s World Cup final, and it's just gone from there. And he's, I can personally say that conversation with Gio back in South Africa and some of his programs I purchased myself have made a massive difference to my batting this year too. So really excited to have him on the podcast to talk more about that and dive into more of his method and his systems, which I really like. And that's a really important thing. It's a system as well to do this. It's not just ad hoc, do this, do that. It's a specific formula and framework. So excited to ask more about that.
Absolutely, yep. We are all about systems here at Cricket Matters, Gio. I think you'll find that out as we go along. But we sort of have what we consider to be a complete approach to cricket coaching that balances physical conditioning, the mental and psychological resilience side of things, and then the technical and tactical skills at the top. We sort of do things in that order. How do those elements resonate with you in terms of your own coaching career and experiences?
Yeah, completely. I think when James and I first connected, we realized that there were a lot of synergies between what we do. As he mentioned, it is a systemized process. So essentially there's 3 steps in it. So step 1, we unlock what I call batting prowess, the ability to manage thoughts, emotions and distractions so you can remain calm, relaxed and present at the crease. Essentially, it's thoughts, emotions and distractions that cause dismissals, not your technique. Dismissals manifest as technical errors when thoughts, emotions, distractions prevent you from executing your skills to the best of your ability. So that's the first step where we lay those foundations. Step 2, fundamentals of successful batting. So key fundamentals that I've identified that every player who's averaged over 50 in Test cricket adheres to. So we show players what they are, how to train them, and then most importantly, how to measure them so that they know if they're doing them correctly. And then if your measurable gives you feedback that you're not, okay, what steps do we take to fix things? And then I think the last thing sort of would align with what you were talking about, tactical, enhancing match play, where we then look at attacking and defensive skills and then ultimately bring it all together in formulating a match process to score runs so that players can have the ability to sum up a situation, devise a plan, and then trust themselves to execute it. And that trust comes from the foundations we laid in the first 2 steps.
Interesting. I love this as well because on so many different levels. Because, like I said earlier, that this is the first type of conversation I had where people start to talk about the mental side of the game. And you always hear commentators and broadcasters say cricket is 90% mental, 10% technical and physical. And you hear this, but no one ever talks about their processes. And I think it was Shane Watson in one of his podcasts where he started introducing the idea too for the very first time during one of his lockdown stuff. But there was no system to it. Everyone goes, yeah, just go and try this. But you were the first person that came across this idea of a systematic approach, because you're right. It's all well and good helping one person, but how can you help multiple people? If you're working with lots of clients and, batting specialists, essentially, who want to score more runs, which they want to do, it is such a key element. It's your thoughts. You're feeling calm, calm and ready at the crease. That's exactly what you feel like, because if you're rushed, you're hurried, you're not thinking clearly, you will get out time and time. I can be a testament to that. I remember most of the times when I get out is when I'm not being calm, I'm not relaxed, and I'm not thinking clearly, whether it's because I'm blowing out my arse because I'm tired or having a process to manage it. And that was the first type of thing to do it. And the other thing I love about it is you talk about how you analyze some of the best people in the world and how they do things. Success leaves clues, right? And that is one of the things I really like about that, is because, what do the greatest players, and there's an element in one of your courses, you talk about this, and it really opened up my ideas to so many different things. So I think let's start there. So when you define people who are at the top of their game, what type of people are we talking about? Are we talking one-day players, T20 players, test players? What do you classify as people at the top of their game in that respect to analyse and go from there?
Yeah, so looking at the fundamentals, obviously Test cricket is the ultimate test. So I looked at every player's averaged over 50 in the modern era, and then looked for common aspects in their play. Yes, they all look different, but they're key things that they all do consistently. And then by looking at that, pulled out sort of things that I called 7 fundamentals of successful batting. And then that gives you a framework, or gives us a framework to work within, which allows players not to get caught up in all the minuscule details of, all these technical positions, but how can we simplify that into 7 things that you can easily check for yourself and that are going to prevent you from making unnecessary changes to your game. Because one of the most bizarre things about cricket is that there are no globally agreed upon fundamentals for batting. People still argue about how you should swing the bat, but, people aren't having, there's fundamental principles in place for golf, for baseball, for all these other sports. But in cricket, it's like, well, we've got this whole host of positions we want you to get into, but how you swing the bat apparently has no impact on your ability to move and execute all of these different strokes. It's kind of been a, find your own way nonsense, which fortunately seems to be petering out of the game a little bit. But so that's what I did. Looked at the best in the world. And the thing that gave me that idea was a book that had a big impact on me, is Greg Chappell on coaching. And he first started speaking about this, unweighting the bat concept and unweighting yourself to move when you're batting. And then, just started incorporating all these different things into my coaching, problem solving, trying to figure out the simplest way to communicate what people make a very complex thing. And always believe that mastery is being able to explain something at the level a 6-year-old will understand. So that's why it's called simple batting. Just keep it as simple as possible and make it as easy as possible for people to learn and improve.
Well, as the non-cricketer, hang on, James, before you dive in, as the non-cricketer here, I find it quite funny because as you're saying, like if you're going to play golf, say, then there's a way to hold the club, like put your fingers together like this and then wrap it around, hold it tight, whatever, wrist loose, whatever it is. But there was no specific way about teaching people how to hold a bat or bat.
No, there is, but it's one way. It's that, your V's should line up on a certain point on the bat, and it should be sort of like between the splice and the outside edge, and you want both to be aligned. But if we look at the greatest players, you've got guys who held the bat with their hands apart, where we've been told that it had to be like this. So for me, your grip should allow you to consistently present the full face of the bat through the ball. And if you can do that and the bat can stay on path and go through the ball, there's no need to make changes to your grip. But previously, if you saw a kid like this, no, you've got to fix that. Or if a guy's bottom hand is a bit far underneath the handle like Steve Smith, it'll be, no, you can't do that. We've got to fix that. But the most important thing is that can you consistently square it up? So same with golf. Guys will have different grips. But again, the underlying principle on the golf swing is you don't swing over the top. It's either back down on path or it's just on the inside, but it's never over the top. But in cricket, people were saying you can't open the bat face at the top of the swing. You've got to keep it square, so the bat goes back square and comes through square. But if you look at every player's average over 50, every single one of them opens the face to point at the top of the bat swing.
And it's right, and that's exactly right. And I always remember the old school MCC coaching manual where everything derives from. It's like you must do this, like to play a Blackfoot shot, you must step back, chop down a tree if you're trying to pull a shot. All these types of things you heard over the years, and the V was the classic thing. Now, for me personally, I can say I quite like the V. The V works for me well because it opens up the shots. I've tried different ways that, grip underhand, opening up different things here now, but it just feels the most natural and comfortable to my style, right? But again, I've seen so many kids and people this year with a more underhand grip with the bottom hand that allows them to still present the full face of the bat, because the most important thing is great contact, right? So if they can still make great contact and access the 360 degrees of the ground, like you said, why change it? However, you asked me this 2-3 years ago, I'd have gone, well, no, you need to have the V's. But it's just completely changed the mindset around it. So going back to the 7 fundamentals, what were those 7 fundamentals you kind of like saw with all the top grade bats? You've talked about unweighting the bat. Let's talk about more of that. What does unweighting the bat actually mean?
So at the top of your bat swing, the toe of the bat is vertical to the sky or close to vertical, and the bat face is open. Again, how open it is depends on what shot you're playing, and also is going to be impacted by your grip. So it's not a hard and fast, this is the exact position that it needs to get to. That would be like, your perfect, most common position. But then if you can work within that, within a range, and you can still consistently get the full face to the ball, you're good.
Okay. So for people out there now, it's the top of the backswing. That's the most important thing to understand. It's that point here now. And there's a great video you have in one of your courses, and it talks about that, and it shows the videos and the stills of each of these batsmen. They all have slightly different angles, but every single one at the point before impact, it was unweighted. And that just, you can see, and you see the momentum they're generating with the power, which helped with the weight to transfer ratio as well, which is incredible. And it's something I'd never looked at before. You always look at, like I said, is the bat angle going to second slip, third slip? Where's the bat angle? Is it close off behind you? But no one ever really spoke about the actual unweighting. I've made a note to that Greg Chappell book as well, the coaching, so I haven't actually read it myself. So I'm going to dive into that too.
And the crazy thing about that also is that when I first started speaking about this, I was getting attacked online by ex-players and people who've, played at the highest level telling me I'm talking absolute nonsense and who am I to make these claims. And had one of the greatest batsmen of all time telling me that this is nonsense, and then you just respond to them with a picture of themselves doing it. You can't bat like that against extreme strength. Well, that's you, pal. That's how bad it is. I've also had face-to-face conversation with ex-South African player, one of South Africa's most fluent ball strikers of all time, exciting batsman. No, you can't do that against express pace. This is you spanking Brett Lee all over the Wanderers in the in a run chase for 100, doing exactly what you're saying there's no time to do.
Are these guys so naturally talented then that they just do it? They don't even realize what they're doing. They're just doing it naturally.
Yeah, that's the natural way to swing a bat. But then we went through a long period where people believed that was wrong, so it was getting coached out of people. You got to go square to square, straight back, straight through, keep the back clip compact, keep it nice and tight so that you can be compact, but that has the opposite effect. It results in you pushing out at balls because you've got no momentum coming into the ball. And you're generating the momentum with your hands versus creating lag with the bat and letting the weight of the bat do the work.
And it's interesting as well because I found when I implemented that into my batting, my timing, but also the ball position at contact was more underneath my eyes because that lag in that positioning, as the bat went up and it came down, you're right, suddenly the ball was naturally coming underneath my eyes as I was striking and making contact with the ball. Which before, you tend to find, most people who haven't got that swing or you just prod forward with your hands, you're then leaving your hands out in front of you, it's taking away from inside that box, going out here, so you're just reaching at balls. Or as opposed to that lag and that backswing coming down, it allows for better time. Obviously, there's practice needs when you change your technique to doing this. However, it allowed for better contact underneath my eyes to hit where I wanted to. So I can't, that was a huge takeaway from that conversation and seeing the videos of all these guys doing it. So I find it interesting. I might have to ask you off air who that person was who said that you had to send them a picture of them doing it themselves. But it was just fascinating seeing the whole range of music, from Ricky Ponting to Al Dravid. I think loads of the guys doing that. It was phenomenal. So in terms of when you're working with new batsmen, okay, let's go back to the run flow state. Well, what does a run flow state mean to you? What does that actually mean to you? That's your process, but what does it actually mean?
I think the easiest way to describe that for everybody is, anybody who's batted, you've had those innings, or sometimes you've played a shot and you've gone afterwards, how the hell did I do that? Okay. That is your innate intelligence playing for you. Okay. Where you're 100% present and you've just reacted to the ball, you're playing on instinct, and it's when the best version of you comes out to play. So everybody, you have those innings once in a blue moon, or, for most amateur players, it's not every blue moon. It's like it's once a season if they're lucky. Okay, and it's like everything just flowed. Everything was easy. You felt like you knew what the bowler was doing before he was going to do it, and everything was just easy. And then you're like, okay, why the hell can't I do that more often? And it's about, putting these three things in place, which allows you to access that state more frequently, which means the best version of you is coming out to play for the team more often.
Nice, I like that. So let's talk about some of the. So again, you work with a range of people, from professionals down to club amateurs, but the vast majority of cricketers around the world are club amateurs. And the things I see, because specifically we're talking about batting today, the things I see time and time again is this idea of this unpredictable scoring. They have no idea what they're going to score from one week to the next. And that's the thing you say at the start, it's inconsistent performer, right? That's what you talk about. And we'll share your 9-step process in a second. But you see some unpredictable ones. But I see a lot of people getting out in their 30s and 40s. Now, originally, I was always thought that it's actually a lot to do with the physical side of things, which is I think a big part of it too. They're not fit enough to go on and score those big runs. But we combine the mindset with the physical side of things now. It's like a lot of time they're not physically fit enough to make the right decisions under pressure, or they not have the right process to take them that step further on. Okay, so what are the things that you see with batsmen in particular, amateur level, club level, good club level too? What are some of the big mistakes that they're making? So we can then go into your run flow step by step process and see how we can help other people do that. So what are the things that you see and pick up time and time again?
99% of players and coaches, I think we touched on it just before we got started, is all of the focus is on technical improvements. So it's technique. Now, I always say to guys, if that really worked, why are so many batsmen struggling? I've done thousands of, one-on-one calls with people who are potentially interested in becoming clients. And when you speak to them, that's all they're doing. And it's because they're always reacting. So everybody's always reacting to low scores and reacting to dismissals. Now, when you're reacting, you're not in control of where your energy and focus are going. And if you're looking to draw your confidence from your scores, you're on a hiding to nothing, because you're going to fail more than you're going to succeed. On average, if you take those 13 greats who I looked at, and you look at their test averages and you combine it with their ODI stats, and you look at how many innings they've played in their career, how often do they score 50 runs or more? On average, it's 3 out of every 10 innings. Some of them are like 67% of the time, 65. At one stage, Steve Smith was ridiculous. He was there at like 54% of the time. But the rest of them, even a guy like Yunus Khan, he was successful 29% of the time, I think it is. So your average amateur player, if that's at an elite level and you extract it and you say, well, cool, the best in each division will be similar, then, other guys are failing successful 10 to 15% of the time if they're lucky. Now, if you're drawing confidence from scores, that's when the fear of failure is going to kick in. So how do we fix that? Oh, well, I keep getting out. It's got to be my technique the reason I'm getting out. My technique isn't good enough. So more energy and focus on technique, technical changes, more conscious thought when you're out in the middle, because you're trying to find form and get a score through these technical changes, which are new in the middle of a season. Now you got a head full of, am I standing the way that I wanted to change? Where's my bat coming from? How am I holding it? Plus, I haven't had a score in 6 innings. I don't want to get out. Then the negative mindset prevents you from moving with purpose, putting bad balls away. You dig a hole. And it's a vicious cycle that I call the cycle of batting despair. And that's where most amateur players are.
And it's interesting you say that, because that was the thing, the big takeaway for me. A couple of things on the course, and it was that idea of like 3 times out of 10 is when they succeed and move forwards and getting 50s. And it's like, oh, that changed my perspective on how I score runs as well. So you're looking to be consistent, but then you start to realize, well, if they're 3 out of 10 times an average. But the thing that really struck a chord with me was the fact that you came up with the stat with out of all the 14 greats you'd analysed and gone through, they were out 89.48% of the time. And that is the greatest players in the history of the game who averaged over 50, right? So if you take the greatest, you look at the less average, the more average players, who are still great players at test level, they're getting out between 90 and 99% of the time. So the phrase that really struck a chord with me to change my way of thinking was combining with the 3 out of 10 when it's a good runs, to score. The idea is that you're always going to get out. it's inevitable. Like, you're going to die, essentially. Like, it's that sort of thing. And you use that in the course module. And I remember that going, holy crap, here. That's such a difference. Whereas embrace the failure and learn from it. And that was my biggest takeaway from that aspect, was like, embrace it, because it's going to happen no matter what happens. You'll get a good ball. But the ones you do fail on, you can reflect, refocus, and start to think about what mistakes you made potentially to do it. And it changes the framework to come back stronger later. And I absolutely love that side of things, because it changed how I approached it personally. It made a massive difference to my game. So for the amateurs out there, well, reframe your ideas around this notion that you're going to get out, aren't you?
Yeah, I think it's just about reframing it and shifting your perspective. That's one of the things, obviously, on how to deal with it. But I think it's what you're alluding to is that, we all know we're going to die, but you don't walk around worrying about dying every day. So you're going to go out to bat, you're going to get dismissed. So just embrace it as an eventuality and enjoy yourself until that moment comes.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing was the idea of, you talk about the technical clutter, I think is a good way to describe it. Everyone focuses on technique, back position, angles, hands, where are they in front of the body, like where's your head, all these sorts of things. But the point is, out in the middle, if you're thinking technique as the ball's coming down to you, you're already doomed. You're already going to get out, essentially. And all the greats tell you this. If you're thinking about technique when you're out in the middle, you're going to struggle. Whether it's batting or bowling, you've got to clear your mind to help you deal with this. So in line with that, let me share this. I love this image because it's like Josh said before at the start. It's a system, it's a process. And we love these systems and processes because it helps other people follow them too. So I'm going to share this now, your 9-step process.
I think, James, if I could just jump in there quickly, because early on you'd asked me about those 7 fundamentals, and we started talking about unweighting. So unweighting is the 6th one. And the first one, like for any amateur player, and it's not even amateurs, whenever you see internationals and that guys have had a prolonged form slump, and when eventually they come out of it, they'll be, oh, well, actually, I was just sitting around, I was having a chat or a beer with, a teammate or an ex-teammate, and the guy says, well, you got to see the ball. And it's like, oh, and they all go, oh, and I forgot to do that because I was worried about getting dropped. I was worried about where my next score is going to come from, worrying about the technical changes I've made that are going to help me get that score. And I was going out to bat, and my focus wasn't to see the ball. And if your focus isn't to see the ball, how the hell are you going to react to it? And how are you going to play on instinct if you're not out there and you're relaxed and you let yourself respond to that stimulus?
And I'll bring it up there. So I got out yesterday, last game of the season yesterday, right? I got out in 42. And do you know why I knew I was almost going to get before the ball was bowled? Because I didn't see the ball. I didn't follow my focus yesterday. And the point of delivery, I can't remember how the ball came out of his hand because I didn't watch it intently enough. I ended up getting caught out behind trying to play a back foot shot. But I know that most of the times I go out this year, the point of delivery is I hadn't seen the ball. And I'm sure you can ask a lot of people when they get out, can they remember that ball has been bowled? Most of them can't say they can, right? So I love the see the ball aspect because it refocuses it back to the simplicity of it, where if you don't see the ball, you can't hit the ball, can you?
For us, that's the number one principle. Every player we work with, everything always comes back to see the ball. So that's the last conscious thought that you should be having before you step up to the crease, is that you want to reaffirm to yourself, okay, I've got to see the ball.
Brilliant. So let's go through the other steps then. So obviously let's go through 1 to 7 if possible. So what's number 2?
Okay, so see the ball. Number 2 is your grip. Does your grip allow you to consistently present the full face of the bat through the ball? Your setup, does it allow you to move forwards and backwards with purpose? 4 is balance. Are you moving from a stable position to a stable position? 5, alignment. Are you using your front shoulder to align yourself to the line of the ball or where the ball's going to be? And then 6 is unweight the bat. And then 7, point of contact. Where are you making contact with the ball in relation to your eyes? And that just depends on whether you're on the front foot, back foot, if it's a cross bat or a straight bat shot. And that's how simple it is. If you can do those 7 things consistently, you can score all around the ground. And then that filters into, when you start looking at the technical aspects of all your attacking and defensive skills, those are the 7 things that inform your ability to get into all the different positions for all the different strokes.
So in terms of without giving away the keys to the kingdom, essentially, can you give people, let's go into point 3. We've talked about the grip a bit. We've talked about see the ball. So what's a simple tip you can give people out there in terms of their setup? And then maybe thinking differently about their setup.
Yeah, so again, your setup, just get into a position. And again, a lot of this is just, it's intuitive that if you stand in a position, if somebody said, okay, cool, go play goalkeeper, how would you stand? Or if you said to somebody, okay, cool, box with me, how would most people set up to box? You intuitively know how to set a power base that's going to let you move or evade a threat or stop something coming, into a goal. So that would be the simplest way to explain, your stance. That you want to have a base like that that's going to let you move forwards and backwards quickly. Because in cricket, we're not moving sideways like a goalkeeper. We're moving in this direction, but we're setting up side on. So does that position allow you to explode forwards and backwards quickly whilst maintaining and being balanced?
And that's interesting you say that, because you see so many people set up. I refer to it as like those nodding things you get on people's desks, so they just nod forward and back down this, yeah? So they're set up, but their arse sticking out behind them. They're leaning over so far here like this.
Yeah.
So the only way their weight is going is to the offside, and they wonder why they get out LBW all the time. So it's like a simple, it's the unathletic position almost, isn't it? So it's interesting you say that. It's like a boxer.
It needs to be dynamic.
Dynamic. Love it. Simple tip. Okay, balance is easy. Let's get to number 5, alignments. Give a little tip on how to help people align with their front shoulders, you said.
Okay, well, so this is where a lot of confusion comes in. So for your stance, it doesn't matter how you start. It's what position are you in at the crucial moment. And the crucial moment is when that ball's being delivered. So is your head still? Are your eyes level? And can you move forwards and backwards with purpose? So are you balanced? Okay. To access the ball, you've got to, people say Steve Smith doesn't play side on. Of course he does. You can't hit a ball through the covers if you don't turn your shoulder into the line of the ball. So, when the ball's coming to you, you've got to turn your shoulder into the line of where you want to hit the ball. So if you're cutting, you're going to turn your shoulder a lot more. You let the ball come alongside of you, level with your eyes, and then you cut it. If you're playing a cover drive, you turn your shoulder, you move forwards towards the ball. And once you've turned your shoulders, your hands go back, the bat goes into the unweighted position. And now when you release the bat, it follows the line that you've created with your body. So that's how you play the original line. That's how you hit through the line of the ball. But if you don't turn your front shoulder and your hands are low, now you're pushing at the ball. And then that's when you can start the curtain rail when the ball's moving around. So it's all about turning that front shoulder into the line of the ball. And then you decide, okay, am I attacking, defending, or leaving?
Nice. I like it. Brilliant. Thanks for that. And obviously, we'll share more details at the end. You can find out about more about Gio's processes towards the end. So let's go into these 9-step processes and talk to how you help people come from inconsistent performers to run machines, as you call it. So in terms of the 9-step process, if you see on YouTube, you can see the beautiful diagram here, the simple batting diagram. So let's start by rapid change, unlock rapid change. Can we talk a little bit about that and some of the things that the guys can take away from that?
Yeah, so as much as you need a match process, you've also got to have a training process that's going to accelerate improvements in your skills development. So when you go down to train, you've got to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're going to measure it. And once you know how you're going to measure it, okay, if my measurable tells me something's off, how am I going to fix it? So by doing that, you can train less and improve faster because the quality of your training and the clarity that you're developing in your playing skills and how you're improving them breeds confidence and self-belief.
In terms of people's practice then, how would you reframe how they practice? How would you talk to them? And people out there listening in going, oh, I just go to club nets. How can I rechange the way I practice? What would you say to them?
So a lot of players would struggle with, do they have time at those club nets to get some one-on-one throwdowns or do some work on their skills? But like a really basic tip that you can do would be just to check for all your straight bat strokes, how close can I bounce the ball into the ground? Just as one example. So you can play your delivery and you can see how close it bounced. If it's bouncing 2 meters away from you, that's giving you feedback that you're early on your strokes. And, when we talk about being compact doesn't mean keeping your hands tight. Compact means contact on the ball under your eyes and the ball staying within a half circle around you. That's being compact. because then your contact points are good, angle of the bat steep on the ball. If the ball does deviate and you get an edge, it's less likely to carry to the slips. But if you're focusing like that and your contact points are consistently under your eyes on back foot, straight bat shots and front foot, your timing is going to be good, because that's the point where you want to be making contact for the most efficient ball striking.
That's interesting you use that drill, how close can they hit it in front of them? Because I remember there was a story, it just came to my top of mind then, how I think one of the England coaches ended up working with Sachin Tendulkar just doing throwdowns in one day in the middle of one of the tests. I think it was before one of the big tests they were playing. And Sachin apparently, I can't remember who it is. I'll have to find the video and put it in the show notes afterwards. But he said for about an hour and a half, he was doing throwdowns to Sachin Tendulkar, and his only thing he was trying to do the entire time was how close can he hit the ball in front of him. So he's like hitting the ball into the ground as close as he possibly could. No matter where the ball came, which angle, he was practicing that one shot for about an hour and a half in terms of that improving his contact. So it's interesting you choose that one drill. I just go back to one of those, that can be one of the greatest of all time, essentially.
Yeah, and if you think about it, well, when do you nick off? You nick off when your hands get out ahead of you, or when your hands get far away from your body and you're away from your body, not aligned with your eyes. So if you shift your focus to improving just that one skill when you're facing bowlers in the nets at club training, you're going to drastically reduce the errors that you're making in the middle, because you're being really, really specific on your contact points.
So here's another question on the line of club nets, because it bugs me a lot about club nets, because most of the time people turn up, they bowl, they have a bat, but there's no thought process going into what they're doing. Like me personally, I hate batting at club nets because I just find balls go all over the place. I'm not working on anything specific, but that's just me. Some people love going to club nets, they can practice all these things. What's something out there that you could say to guys from you've seen, particularly for the batsmen out there, if they're going to club nets, and everyone's got to have a club net sometimes to show what they can do in the team to get picked for the teams. But how do you help the batsmen think differently about club nets to help them maybe get picked for teams if they're new to a club or something like that?
Well, again, I think if it's just about that, number one principle, see the ball. Okay, as that next bowler starts his run up, or as he's about to bound, I'm sure you've seen there's quite a few players, you can actually see them mouthing on TV. As the bowler bounds, you can see him saying, watch ball. I think Mitchell Marsh does it. But you can do it verbally, you can do it mentally. When you choose to do it, everybody's different. Everybody's an individual, so you've got to find out what works for you and what lets you switch on in that moment, and then focus on your contact points. But you can't be thinking about your contact points while you're trying to do it, because you're not present. So that's why you've got to measure afterwards. So you play, you measure, you take the feedback. If it was good and it bounced close, well done. And that's attacking and defensive strokes, straight bat. And if it bounced 2 meters away, you can go, okay, well, it's a little bit early. Where do I want it to bounce next time? Okay, I want it to bounce in half the distance. Now you've sent the message of what you want. Now you've got to clear your mind. Trust yourself that that information you've consciously given your unconscious mind, that your unconscious mind is going to use it for the next delivery. And then you just got to keep playing and measuring. And then the other things are just stable to stable. So really simple concepts, but never measure more than one thing at a time. So if you're going to do the contact points, do the contact points. If that's consistent, then you might say, but if that is consistent, they're bouncing close, you will be balanced. Another one could be, did I move from a stable position to a stable position? Because if you're moving all over the place after your strokes, you're not stable. If you're not stable, how can you consistently have good contact points, and how can you have consistent contact with the ball? You can't.
It's, again, going back to the idea of one thing. All right, making sure you're one thing. There's a great book called The One Thing. We use it all the time in anything we're doing in terms of coaching and helping people. But it's the idea of the one thing. And so if you've got multiple things going through your head at once, then it ends up being nothing. It's like chase two rabbits, go home hungry, essentially, right? So again, I'm just reinforcing the idea of people that practice, like focus on one thing and do it well. And when you do it well and it feels comfortable and it feels natural to you, then layer another slice, a piece on top of the puzzle, okay? But don't try and do three things at once. You go home hungry. But like as Gio said, one thing at a time, do that well and focus on that one thing. I'm a big fan of people taking the nets and saying, right, today's net session, I'm going to focus on this one thing, right? Today's my one focus I'm going to do on that, and just hammer that home time and time again. Now, step two in the fearless mind side of things is like fearful and nervous. So we all should feel some type of nerves when we're going out to bat, particularly if it's a big game. right? That's natural. That's all here now. But what are some of the things that people can do when they're going out to bat and help them calm their nerves? If you've used it in the past with other batsmen, and you maybe even used yourself.
I think the most important thing is, first you've got to acknowledge that nerves are natural. So don't beat yourself up for getting them. But it's how you choose to perceive them that's going to impact the effect that your nerves have on you. So, if you're feeling a little bit nervous, acknowledge it, and then actually just embrace them. Nerves are good. Because if you're feeling a little bit nervous, you're going to be switched on. You're wired. But what we don't want to happen is for the nerves to then lead to negative thoughts. Oh, geez, I'm nervous. Oh, this is a big game. Oh, what happens if I fuck up? What happens if I don't score? What happens if? And the what happens if is then what becomes debilitating, where you can freeze at the crease. So acknowledge them as being part of the game and a natural, something that's going to happen, but then shift your focus to, okay, well, what's going to help me be successful? Okay, cool, I've got to see the ball. And just catch yourself when the hamster's running on that wheel and you're worrying about things that either happened in the past or things that haven't even happened. Your brain doesn't know the difference between the past, the present, and the future. So you've got to be present to see the ball. And if you catch yourself jumping into the future, you catch yourself going to the past, you've got to bring yourself back to the present.
And that is the whole idea of focusing on one thing, and that is at the time, and that's see the ball. The two principles you kind of talked about quite a lot of here when you're feeling like this. So in terms of people getting easily distracted, when you were batting, let's use you as an example. What was your process when you were batting?
Oh, massive overthinker.
Yep.
Massive overthinker. Cluttered with technical thoughts. If I got off to a good start and I was flowing, then the brain would go, oh, why are you flowing? What are you doing? Keep doing what you... Oh, shit, next off out. Okay. And the really frustrating thing for me was that I found that most of the runs I scored was when I didn't feel good, which then sort of made you really graft it out and you get these ugly runs. But the biggest frustration for me was that when things were going really well, I would always prevent myself or stop myself from being present because I'd straight away think, oh, hang on a second, what are you doing? Why is it so easy today? What are you doing that's making it so easy? And now you're self-analyzing what's going on.
And then you didn't see the ball, right?
No, I didn't see the ball. But, I stopped playing in 2012. So I hadn't worked my process out by then. So I sort of sat down and formulated all of this. I think it was in 29 and created this flow chart that we're looking at here and started, having a systematic approach with players. And it was purely just because I started working with a business coach. I said, cool, I want to go online. I want to reach more people. And he said, well, why all these players this last summer? I think I'd had 4 players scored 1700s between them. And that was ranging from an under 13 getting 400s and under 11 getting 300s, under 17 getting 4, no, under 17 getting 5. And a guy who'd just come back from his studies in the UK to pursue a career here. He's captaining SAA at the moment, captain South Africa to New Zealand. People thought he was mad coming back here. And he was like, no, I'm coming back there and they can't leave me out if I'm the best player. He scored 500s, got a deal with Northerns, then got a deal with the Titans. And yeah, my coach was like, why are these guys scoring hundreds? I said, well, they work with me. He was like, well, that's not good enough. That can't be a reason why people should work with you. Oh, well, why are they doing so well? Because they work with me. He said, you've got to show people how you're going to take them on a journey from where they currently are to where they want to be. So I sat down, formalized this in 2019, and it hasn't changed since because it works. And I think touching on something that you said earlier, focusing on one thing at a time. Okay. I think people get so distracted trying to add complexity, thinking that, oh, well, if I can do this, now I've got to make it harder. But if you don't keep relaying the foundations, the best are the best because they're prepared to do the boring stuff. They do the basics for longer and more consistently than everybody else. And it's having the self-discipline to do the boring stuff longer and harder and better than everybody else. The better comes from the measuring. How do you know if you're doing it well? How do you know if you're improving? And that is it. But everybody wants to be entertained all the time. I remember years ago when I was still doing a lot of in-person stuff with kids. Oh, this drill's boring. Well, mate, until you can do this, it's like you should be nailing this, 5 out of every 6 balls minimum, you should be nailing on a drill like this. You can only do 2 or 3. You're not good enough to move to the next step. And even when you are good enough to move to the next step, you still got to do step 1 every single time that you train. You got to revisit it.
It's funny you say do the basics well and be comfortable with almost with boredom essentially. And one of the things we are trying to educate all the guys we're working with right now, it sounds so simple, but yet so many of them struggle with this, and that's hydration. Most people and most athletes and cricketers we're working with are chronically dehydrated. And if you're chronically dehydrated, how do you expect to think clearly in game times? And that is something simple by just drinking, like you just took a sip of your water then, probably, right? So, and Josh is drinking water now. It's one of those things where okay, well, let's look at the process. We're looking, in terms of athletes, we're looking at now, okay, what's your process in the morning, right? What are you eating for breakfast and what are you drinking? Because they're not even thinking about this. They may be getting something on the go. They're not even drinking. They'll get some squash and maybe if when it drinks halfway through. It's no, let's get the basics right. What type of food are you eating in the morning to give you long sustained energy, to help you make better decisions at the crease, think clearly, and be able to perform for longer, because you need the physical, you need the mental, and to perform the game of cricket, you need to make better decisions. So those are simple things that you can make in the morning, away from technical, away from anything else, right? Yet they don't do it. And we keep saying, if you have a glass of, half a litre, a litre of water in the morning with electrolytes to help you absorb the water, take some carbohydrate drink in the drink as well before you go out to bat and play, because it's just little energy stuff you can do. It doesn't make you feel heavy, but it makes you perform better because you're thinking clearer. So that's a basic tool. It's something basic that you can just do yourself. But I like how you're saying about the basics done well and clearing the mindset. And like you said as well, in terms of, cluttered overthinker. I was a massive overthinker too. Massive. I still am into a lot of it as well. But when you listen to some of the greats, you listen to yourself in terms of how you get this process in place. It's not about finding systems to constantly think about new stuff. It's about keeping all the stuff away, right? So it's that process in place. So when you're batting, that you find to go and keep all those thoughts away. Now, from speaking with you and listen to a podcast with Ricky Ponting, actually, he did many years ago. He used to mouth, watch the ball, watch the ball, watch the ball, because he wanted to keep all his thoughts out. He said that, and I'm like, wow, that's really insightful. And you talk about seeing the ball and stuff like that. So for me, my process now, every time a ball is coming into a bowl, I say, watch the ball, the first 2 times he's running in. Then just before the point of release, I say focus, because I like to have more of a soft focus. I like to look at the box where the hand comes out. So it makes me open up my eyes to look at that box. And more times than not, if I don't do that, and I'm looking for where the ball to see the ball, I'll get out. And that's what happened yesterday. I didn't say focus. I didn't look for the hand position, which meant I get out. I wasn't early enough on the ball to get it. So what's some of your things that went through your head, or you kind of changed different? I know it was injury that curtailed your career, right? We can talk about that a bit later on. But what were some of the things that you maybe said to yourself to help keep those thoughts out? And what are some of the things during the process of the ball running in that you help coach your guys, talk them through to keep those thoughts out?
So I advise guys to use a think box and a play box. That, if you step across the return crease, that can be a think box where you can process everything that's happening to you, what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what are you observing around you, deal with it. And then when you step back in, now your play boxes, I've got to see the ball, set up to score and see the ball. And then just to touch on something that you were talking about there earlier, about consistent processes. If you want consistent outputs, you've got to have consistent inputs. So sort of coming back to earlier, you asked me, I don't think I quite finished it off. You said, what are the mistakes that you see players make? And it's not only amateur players, it's even when I speak to professionals, that everybody's spending their time at 7 and 8, focusing on technique. But what I've discovered over the last 26 years is if you formed bad habits in the first 2 steps, habits in how you think, that's what the unlock is about, and habits in your fundamentals, you can spend as much time as you want at 7 and 8, and you'll never see drastic improvements in your performance. Because it's those habits, those unconscious ingrained habits that you formed that are causing your outputs. So I don't know how many times you've probably experienced this yourself, where you're struggling with a specific shot, or you're not good off your legs. So the whole off season, you get down to the nets and you work on your leg side play, and then the season starts and you're strong with your legs and you've lost your offside play because there was something fundamentally flawed in your setup, okay, which prevented you from accessing the leg side. Now you've made a fundamentally flawed adjustment, which has opened up the leg side, but it's made you lose your strength. So that's why, the first two steps, we address those things, form new habits in how you think, equip you with the skills so that you can develop batting prowess, manage those thoughts and emotions, be present ball by ball. Then you're going to convert starts and then get you clarity in your fundamentals. Your fundamentals are strong. We don't even have to look at anything. Once you've gone through the whole second step, 4, 5, and 6, you're hitting balls beautifully and you can access the full field. So now you're confident in your ability to score freely around the ground. Then it's easy to enhance attacking and defensive skills.
Love it. And I think that's such an important aspect we play. We focus on so much today now. Is again, Gio, I'm sure we can talk about to the nth degree of positions of certain shots, where your hand should be, where your bat should be, where should your head be. But that's advanced stuff, and people haven't mastered the basics of their mindset and the fundamentals right at the start, and their consistent processes right.
That advanced stuff happens when your fundamentals are rock solid. You don't have to think about it.
Yep, exactly, and that was the biggest takeaway this season, was when I stopped thinking about technique in the middle, had that consistent process. Because I started slowly to start the season. Maybe it was the World Cup hangover, I don't know. But I remember I was thinking so much technical stuff. And I went, hang on a second, let's go back to basics. Cleared those thoughts, and that's when the runs started to change. And it was frustrating, but the process in place to analyze what I was doing wrong were key to it. And you realize, no, actually, I think that's the first step that a lot of people have to understand, is that they don't know what they don't know. And most of the time they don't know it's a mental problem. And it's a thought process problem. And I think hopefully today we've started to raise awareness around the mental side of the game and the mental processes and the mental training you can do to help improve your actual skills and tactical process further up the chain, not right at the start, right?
And it's the fastest way to make improvements to your performance, because you don't have to go down and spend time in the nets. And the amount of, it's extreme examples, but we had a guy now this last UK summer. He was interested in doing this full program, didn't move ahead. We got to the last 6 weeks. I said, cool, we're doing a condensed 6 weeks batting prowess training. He said, mate, I'm struggling. I've had my worst season of my life. I think he's, how old is he? I think he's older than late 20s. Anyway, give him his access, watches his modules, jump on the live call on Monday. He's like, mate, I scored my maiden century. Never scored 100 in his life, without setting foot in the nets, just dealing with fear, how to maintain your focus, and then having a clear structure when you go into a match. Okay, this is how I'm going to sum up the situation. Now I'm going to devise a plan, and I'm going to trust myself to execute my plan. It's like, mate, this is nuts. And in the beginning of the innings, he said he realized he was batting to survive instead of to score because of the fear, because he'd had such a terrible season. The minute, it's all about self-awareness. The minute he caught himself, he said, hang on, what do I need to do? I've got to set up with the intention to score, because the purpose of batting is to score runs, not to protect your wicket. And he said then all of a sudden he got the first boundary away, second boundary away, and then next thing it was like more than a run a ball to 100 when, he faced 30-odd balls for 3 runs up front, but ended up scoring a less than runnable 100. It's all about self-awareness and having a plan, having something that you can follow, a structure, a process.
Brilliant. I absolutely love it. Well, Gio, we've spoken about so many things today and everything here. How can people find out more information about you, to learn more about your coaching technique, your system, your processes? Where's the best place they can find out more information about you, to learn and dive more into this? Because we can talk about this for hours long end, but I think, we can say that maybe for another podcast to bring you back again on here, because I think it's been absolutely fantastic insight so far, and we're just scratching the surface on so many different things.
Yes, if guys want to get hold of me, personal Instagram, Gio_Colussi. Otherwise, simplebatting.com will probably be the easiest port. If you're on Facebook, we do have a free Simple Batting group where, we take you through the outline of our process. There's interviews, training tips, all sorts of things in it. You can just look us up, simplebatting.com. Not simplebatting.com, sorry, on Facebook, Simple Batting. And you should find the group. And then you can get in touch with us, find out more.
Awesome. Josh, what have you learned today?
I've learned that I need to look at the ball, see the ball, focus on my setup. I'm going to go and join the local cricket club, and I'm going to nail it. No, James, I expect you with those 7 principles, mate. Pin them on your fridge, and next season, you've got to be getting 50s and 100s, mate. I'm going to hold you to it.
Okay, well, only 3 out of 10, remember? Only 3 out of 10. Let's hold it down there.
And I think, yeah, and it doesn't have to be complicated. And I think the saddest thing about batting, as it is at the moment, the way that most people view it, cricket's supposed to be your outlet as an amateur player, where you're going to get away from work stress, or it's your time away from family. You're supposed to be going there, and it's supposed to be enjoyable. And sadly, most are going from season to season, week to week, in a negative frame of mind, paralyzed by fear, worrying about what teammates think, underwhelmed with performance, knowing that they should be doing better, knowing how they play in the nets versus how they play in a match. And it's supposed to be enjoyable.
Yeah. And there's nothing more enjoyable than scoring runs.
Yeah, it is. It's incredibly satisfying. So set up to score, see the ball, and enjoy it.
Yeah. I don't think we could wrap up on a better place than that, really, do we? Could we? No. Gio, it's been really good. We'll speak to you off air. Thank you so much. James, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Until next time.